And the other possibility, in my view, is pretty much an uncontrolled escalation into full-blown war that would become a regional war and that could become a world war. I think we're really at that moment right now.
So Tucker Carlson just sat down with Jeffrey Sachs to discuss what could be the most dangerous moment in decades. Sachs isn't some pundit. He's a Columbia economist who's advised governments worldwide on crises exactly like this. When someone with his credentials warns about World War III, we need to listen. Let's break this down.
As we speak, the world economy is reeling. It's reeling because as everybody has learned in their geography in the last few weeks, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. As long as it's closed, it means that there's a worldwide economic crisis building. So time is not permissive right now. We can't say, well, we'll decide in another month. We'll see how things go. We'll negotiate and see what happens.
Sachs is absolutely right about the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of global oil passes through that 34-mile choke point. When it closed after the February assassination, oil hit $180 per barrel. The 1973 embargo quadrupled prices and triggered global recession. This closure is already worse. We're seeing shortages of everything from fertilizer to aluminum.
Oil and gas, obviously, but also fertilizers and petrochemicals and many, many other key commodities, aluminum and others, is closed. To simply open it is fine. That's basically what the off-ramp would allow. It would be the right answer. It would not solve any of the underlying issues that led to this, and it would not solve any of the stated objectives of the United States, much less Israel. I don't believe those objectives were valid, and therefore I don't think that they should be the basis of a decision to take or to not take that exit ramp. But the point is, there's a way out of this thing that would avoid the escalation to something quite different.
February 28th was the drone strike that killed Iran's top nuclear negotiator in Baghdad. What Sachs understands is that Iran's missile capabilities have fundamentally changed the game. The January strikes on Saudi Aramco showed how easily critical infrastructure can be hit. Israel's Iron Dome is designed for short-range rockets, not hypersonic missiles.
And if that threat does not lead to Iran conceding, then we have to follow through, not with more time and waiting because of this unstable situation, but we have to return to massive bombing, this time even more. And what we can suspect on that alternative is that the Iranians will, of course, strike back and strike back very hard and very rapidly. And what we have all learned also since February 28th, since the start of this war, is that the entire Gulf region is exposed to missile fire from Iran, as is Israel, in fact, because we also have come to understand that the anti-missile defenses are permeable, limited, even depleted in many areas.
Sachs spent decades studying oil shocks for the World Bank and IMF. Modern energy infrastructure is far more complex and vulnerable than in the 1970s. One missile hitting the wrong facility in Kuwait or UAE could shut down production for months. He's not being alarmist. He's applying hard economic data to military realities.
In Iran and in the Gulf, and a lot in Israel as well. And the result of that would not be peace followed by some easy recovery. It would be a global calamity brought upon us in a few short weeks. So to return to the basic question, Trump could say, we're not going to go to disaster. We just pull back. That's the right answer. If he says instead, we can't wait any longer, we're going to attack, I believe we will see a different world 4 weeks from now, a world that is profoundly damaged, the world economy in crisis, the possibility of escalation to a full world war.
Even Tucker himself apologized last month for initially supporting the Iran strikes, saying he was caught up in the moment. More importantly, this mirrors Trump's Venezuela miscalculation, thinking military action would automatically secure resources. Iran has spent 40 years preparing for exactly this scenario, unlike Maduro's crumbling military.
Well, like we find out every day when we're looking at our screen, this is an AI, it can make mistakes. Well, apparently Palantir's mistake was to kill 160 innocent schoolgirls. This is not definitively known, but it's what is being widely reported. So we will perhaps someday find out what really happened. Iran has lost thousands of people. Iran has been devastated, tens of billions of dollars of damages that will take years and years basically to recover. For me, as a development economist whose whole career over half a century is to try to build things, I don't like to see things knocked down this way. The mindlessness of it, the cruelty of it, the brazen destruction, the glorification of this violence by Hegseth and others, I find completely, totally repulsive. So first, Iran has suffered a lot.
This historical context is crucial. Iran's current behavior stems directly from 70 years of Western intervention. The 1953 coup against Mossadegh created the authoritarian Shah, whose brutality sparked the 1979 revolution. Iran isn't inherently aggressive. It's been responding defensively to decades of attacks on its sovereignty.
In 1953, Iran was a parliamentary democracy. Iran had not invaded or attacked another country for a century and a half. This was a peaceful country. It had been invaded several times, but it was a democracy that didn't threaten anybody, didn't want to threaten anybody, hadn't threatened anybody, hadn't invaded any place actually since the 1790s in a brawl over who controlled Basra. So, in other words, very esoteric things from the 1790s. But since then, Iran had been bothered, but had not bothered anybody else. And in 1953, the Iranian prime minister elected, respected, Prime Minister Mossadegh, had the audacity to say the thing never to be said by this region, which is, I think the oil under our ground is Iranian, not British. And when he uttered that thought that maybe Iran's oil belonged to Iran, immediately the British Empire, in the form of MI6, came to the new ascendant American empire in the guise of the CIA and said, we got to overthrow this guy, which of course they did successfully. They made what today we would call a color revolution. They stirred up protests in the streets. They stirred up unrest, and Mossadegh was chased from power. And the United States installed what the Persian Empire would have called a satrapy, meaning that Iran became a kind of province of the American empire under ultimately CIA rule. And we put the Shah of Iran as the face of that empire, and the police organization Savak as the enforcers of that empire. That lasted 26 years. In 1979, as the Shah of Iran was dying of cancer, The people led a revolution, an uprising, and threw out Savak and the CIA and the Shah.
The oil nationalization issue never went away. Iran still controls the world's fourth largest reserves, and Western companies have been locked out since 1979. The current crisis isn't really about nuclear weapons or regional influence. It's about who controls Middle Eastern energy resources, just like in 1953.
So when Trump gives his explanations for the current war, he says, oh, nuclear or this or that. These are convenient current explanations for something that has been on his mind for 46 years as well. Because the American empire suffered a slight. A country got out from under American CIA control, which you don't allow to happen. And from 1980, it's been nonstop war. It's been an economic war. What our Treasury Secretary, who I increasingly regard to be a thug, basically, not a Treasury Secretary, but someone who delights and gloats in crushing other economies by using financial means or trade sanctions or financial blockages, and delights in it, explained in Davos this year in a Fox News interview with Maria Bartiromo that our statecraft destroyed the Iranian economy last year. Well, we've been doing that kind of statecraft. What a horrible Orwellian term for destroying another country's economy. We've been doing that for decades.
46 years of obsession explains everything about current policy. Treasury Secretary Yellen's economic statecraft, meaning financial warfare, has cost Iran over $200 billion. But notice how she celebrates crushing their economy while American families struggle with inflation from these same policies.
Of course, anyone that knows the history of this knows that this is Orwell to the nth power. By that, I mean such bizarre propaganda, you don't quite even know where to start. The reason is that the Iranians have not pursued a nuclear weapon. Our own intelligence agencies have said that repeatedly. What they have pursued, though, is a treaty with the UN Security Council to confirm that, to put them under strict monitoring under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but in return for ending the U.S. economic warfare on Iran. What Iran has wanted for 15 years is you supervise us, you control us, fine, but lift your sanctions. Let us breathe. Let us have a normal economy. Let us trade.
Every U.S. intelligence assessment since 2007 confirms Iran stopped weapons development. The 2015 nuclear deal offered exactly what he describes: comprehensive monitoring in exchange for sanctions relief. Trump killed that deal specifically to maintain the pretext for war.
And he said so vividly, vocally in 2024. He said, raise $1 billion for me. It's a deal. You'll get all the benefits from this. What he did in Venezuela, he thought he was about to do in Iran as well. So this needs to be understood as just one more piece of this. Yes, he wanted to fight with Iran for 46 years, at least since 1980, probably 47 since 1979. But what he thinks he learned from kidnapping the Venezuelan president and then suborning the Venezuelan government is, I can do a decapitation and then own the oil of that country. And so part of the motivation now was revenge, bring Iran back into the empire. But part of the benefit of bringing Iran back into the American empire is you get the oil. And he thought within one day he'll get the oil because just like removing Maduro, he thinks, gave America Venezuela's oil, he thought killing the Iranian governmental leadership, starting with this religious supreme leader and then the top officials of the government that were meeting that day with the supreme leader, he would take the oil. So that's the tableau. This is why it's hard to take the exit ramp, because there were reasons for this war. To my mind, cruel, illegal, delusional. So I don't abide by any of those reasons, but there were reasons for this war. And taking the off-ramp means that none of those would be fulfilled.
Remember Trump's explicit quid pro quo to oil executives. Give me $1 billion, get all the benefits. The Venezuela parallel is perfect. After recognizing Guaido as president, U.S. companies expected to control Venezuelan oil. Same playbook, bigger prize with Iranian reserves.
This is the basic point. Yes, we've had our own misguided ideas about this, but it's just bizarre. Of course, Iraq, we know in detail that this was a concocted war. But Syria has never been understood in as much depth, but it's the same story. Why suddenly did Barack Obama feel the compulsion to task the CIA with overthrowing Bashar al-Assad?
Assad must go.
Yes.
That was on the lips of everyone in one day.
Are you kidding? I remember I was on Morning Joe that morning that either Hillary or Obama said Saddam must go, and Joe turned to me and said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "Oh, that's interesting. How are they going to do that?" Well, it took 14 years, hundreds of thousands of deaths, tens of billions of dollars, massive destruction, massive destabilization.
Refugee crisis.
To put a jihadist in charge right now and then clean it up. But
$10 trillion. That's the clean break strategy's real cost since Netanyahu's 1996 plan to remake the Middle East. Iraq, Libya, Syria, all regime changes serving Israeli regional dominance while American taxpayers foot the bill and our infrastructure crumbles.
We're bleeding from Israel's wars. And this, I think, is really important to understand. You know, Trump said something quite interesting, the Washington gaffe, meaning that he told the truth, not off script. But he said we can't afford the wars and those things like childcare, Medicare and Medicaid and other those individual things, he said. And you know what? It's true. We're bleeding. And what did he do? He said, okay, we're going to cut all those things that Americans actually need and want, because we want our health care. We actually want to be able to have dental repairs or get medicines or see a doctor or have an operation if our lives depend on it. We want that. And Trump said, no, we have to have war instead. So he put in a budget a couple of weeks ago, which didn't get any attention because it won't be enacted by Congress. But he put in a budget in which the military spending goes up another $500 billion. And the things like he said, you know, the health and other things, oh, we can't afford that, goes down in this budget to make people who are hurting in this country, they would hurt desperately more, not to mention the gas pump, and not to mention everything, food prices and everything else that they are already facing from these wars, but will face cataclysmically if they don't choose the off-ramp.
This hits every American family directly. Trump's new budget increases military spending by $500 billion while cutting healthcare, childcare, and Medicare. We're literally choosing Israeli wars over American children's medical care. The math is that stark and that cruel.
We tried your approach. It's done. Now we're going to try peace. That's what he needs to tell him. It can work.
If he doesn't do that, and in the next few days, this accelerates, and you've said if it does accelerate, Iran's first move will be to destroy civilian infrastructure in the Gulf, desal, energy, the rest. What are the effects at that point? Like, let's just start with the economic effects on the rest of the world.
Yeah, strangely enough, I came into my profession, which I've been a professor at universities for 46 years and advised well over 100 governments around the world. I came into
His credentials matter here. Sachs literally predicted the 1970s stagflation in his PhD dissertation. When someone who wrote the definitive analysis of oil shocks warns we're heading for global economic catastrophe, that's not opinion. That's expertise backed by decades of data.